And finally, new rule. Please don't make the Olympics into the Oscars. Oh, what's that? They did already? Yeah. You know, back in April when the Oscars aired, I commented in this space that the theme of that evening was, "We dare you to be in the world." Well, thank God we found some of those bad people in the Olympics now, and not a moment too soon. The director of, no, that was sarcasm. The director of the opening ceremony was fired hours before the event because they found out there was a Holocaust joke in a comedy routine he did decades ago. Well, you know, context is everything. Obviously, it didn't strike people as beyond the pale at the time. Young people have to stop flattering themselves that they're Nostradamus and would have foreseen, had they been around then, everything that's unacceptable now. And for further context, Mel Brooks wrote one of the most successful musicals of all time around the song "Springtime for Hitler." Why do we allow the people who just want to bitch to always win? Days before that firing, the opening ceremony's musical director, was also forced out because someone dug up an interview with him from 1994 where he admitted to bullying classmates as a child. As a child. Remember when your teacher used to try and scare you by saying, "This is going to go on your permanent record"? Yeah. No longer an empty threat now. And the creative director of the entire shebang, of the whole Olympics, got shit canned because he once made a fat joke in a private conversation. This is called a purge. It's a mentality that belongs in Stalin's Russia. How bad does this atmosphere we are living in have to get before the people who say cancel culture is overblown admit that is in fact an insanity that is swallowing up the world? What a ridiculous crowd. I'm back, not the audience. I'm back. They're still. And that is not a conservative position, my friends. My politics have not changed, but I am reacting to politics that have. And this is yet another example of how the woke invert the very thing that used to make liberals liberals. Snitches and bitches, that's not being liberal. The Associated Press is a real news organization, yeah? So why am I reading this headline? Olympic surfing exposes whitewashed native Hawaiian roots. Yeah, the Olympics added surfing this year. Good. Surfers deserve to be recognized as athletes. I'm sorry. What I meant to say is, no, that's cultural appropriation. The AP says that for Hawaiians, probably all two of them, including surfing in the Olympics, is an extension of the racial indignity seared into the history of the game and their homeland when white outsiders took over their spiritual art form. Or just people having fun in the ocean. I must say, of all the violations of the woke penal code, cultural appropriation just might be the dumbest of all. First of all, there are 25,000 islands in the Pacific. How do we know a Hawaiian was the first to stand on a board in the water? It seems like something anyone in any ocean would eventually get around to. And if you're a surfer, it doesn't matter if you're black, white, or in between. You all taste the same to sharks. But let's say a Hawaiian did invent surfing. Should he or she have kept it to themselves? Most of human history is a horror story, but the good parts are about different groups coming together and sharing. It's sort of the whole point of the Olympics, which itself comes from Greece, where wrestling was invented as a way for completely heterosexual. Badminton has roots in India. Tennis comes from France. skiing from Scandinavia and taekwondo from Korea. Judo was appropriated from the Far East and skateboarding from the far out. What is this new rule that the first thing to do, that the first to do something, are the only ones who get to have it? Jewish people spent most of their history wandering, but when they see other people milling around, they don't say, "Can you not? That's sort of our thing." You know, change is not synonymous with progress. Newer doesn't automatically mean better. This new idea that each culture must remain in its own separate silo is not better. It's not progress. And in fact, it's messing with one of the few ideas that still really does make this melting pot called America great. Not everything is about oppression. Stealing natural resources from indigenous peoples, yes, of course, that is exploitation. But I swear not one Beach Boys song resulted in any Hawaiian having less waves to surf. Not one African record buyer stopped purchasing local music after Paul Simon made Graceland. But lots of white buyers in America were turned on to and then bought African music. And today, Korean boy bands make Western style music. You don't get to number one singing this. And that's the great thing about cultural mixing. It makes things better for everyone. BTS can be a hit in America, and I can get kimchi on a taco. Isn't that better than everyone walling itself off from outsiders? I thought walls were supposed to be bad. But we're living now in a world where straight actors are told they can't play gay roles, and white novelists aren't allowed to imagine what it would be like to be a Mexican immigrant, even though trying to inhabit the life of someone else is almost the very definition of empathy, the bedrock of liberalism. And by the way, if anyone deserves to bitch about stealing in the Olympics, it's the horses in the equestrian events who have to watch humans get medals for everything they do.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Sorry about that. That video was a bit long. If you guys are losing a bit of patience or getting frustrated with Bill Mayer there, I know he's not exactly everyone's favorite. I'm just curious about people's thoughts about his little spiel there. That was from 3 years ago. And I thought it was interesting to see, to kind of juxtapose what he's saying now after what's happened there at the Olympics with what he said then, you know. So can everyone hear me all right? Are we having any problems? It's good to see you all. Thanks for coming. Like, share, and subscribe, I guess. In case you haven't noticed, Abby's not here. She's, I guess, Tosh Schmidt had something like an interview online, so they're needing her streaming area there. So she'll be with us as soon as that wraps up. So hopefully that'll be fairly soon. So I'm not seeing anyone complain about any sound problems, so I'm going to take it that means that you guys can hear me. So let me just take a look at these, changing these banners around a little bit. I wanted to talk today about the Olympism, cosmopolitanism, and nationalism. So I'm not sure if you guys are looking for more entertainment and videos and stuff, but I was going to get more into the reading today. Not sure what you mean. Think they may have to make a new stream? What do you mean? We're not broadcasting on Rumble right now because I need Abby to set that up. But anyway, I'm just showing you what I wanted to talk about today here, so I don't get kind of losing my train of thought here. Just kind of start rambling. So unfortunately, everything is paywalled, and I'm broke. Well, not so much actually. Just got paid at the top of the month, so kind of skipped the whole. Usually with Abby here, we kind of say, "Hey, what's going on? How was your week and stuff?" It's the top of the month here, so um, got some funds, but don't want to be splurging it all away. So things like buying the full article to be able to read like something like this would be nice, but not something that the lumpen proletariat gets privilege of doing. So, um, but I thought with all this discussion about what this insane cultural Marxism taking over the Olympics and stuff, and then whatever satanic rituals people want to give whatever take they have on all this nonsense. I think there's other things a little more academic and deeper going on, as opposed to just this like cancel culture warrior, whatever you want to call it stuff. So I thought that at least like looking at the abstracts of these little articles kind of gives us a little bit of an idea of what sort of uh, forces are at play, we might say, what kind of facets there are to the Olympics here. So let's just quickly read this. It's not too much. Uh, Published April 2021. Olympism, cosmopolitanism, and nationalism, the many facets of the Olympics. Unity and diversity. This motto of the 2021 Games in Tokyo nicely expresses the tension between universalism and particularism that besets not only the Olympic Games, but almost every aspect of international politics today. Treating the Olympics as a microcosm, this article explores whether the Games are able to overcome that tension. It is argued that their specific symbols, rituals, and myths have been hijacked by nationalist ones, to which the International Olympic Committee responded by advancing cosmopolitan ones, as a result of which the Games are effectively contested from both ends of the universalist particularist spectrum. While this disqualifies Olympism to serve as a viable middle ground and facilitator of peace, the Games may still act as a substitute for war by directing our constant struggle for national identity into peaceful channels. Nationalist penetration of the Games should therefore not be resented, but welcomed for the sake of peace. We see there's kind of a spin to the article. The authors of the article will have their biases, of course, but I find it interesting about how they're talking about like the universalist particular spectrum. There's kind of more deeper philosophical things at play than just people's idea of uh, whatever queer people insulting the Christian religion kind of thing. The idea that the Olympics is becoming woke or not kind of thing is it's interesting. I found actually an article I'll bring up later. Let me see what it's called here real quick. Where did it go? The Christian roots of wokeism and what it means for American politics. So that's a little bit of a strange, controversial, counterintuitive take to claim that wokeism doesn't come from critical race theory so much as it comes from Christianity. But we can get into that, and we can assess the author's work and see if there's any validity to that claim. I find it compelling in some ways, but anyway, I digress. But about this article here, arguing that their specific symbols, rituals, and myths have been hijacked by nationalist ones, which the International Olympic Committee responded by advancing cosmopolitan ones. So as far as that whole stunt with the artist, it's very intriguing to analyze what happened there with this rituals and myths that were supposedly hijacked by nationalist ones. But then I'm thinking what happened with that Dionysian Last Supper thing was that was more like the cosmopolitan, like re-hijacking. Maybe that's my little. I posit that to you. You know, I submit that idea. I don't know if you guys comment on that. You know, let me take a look at some of your comments here. I'm just on my own at the moment, so bear with me if I seem like I'm ignoring you. So, yeah, Sean say that's a copyright strike. Did you guys have you lost me or something? Anyway, I'm not sure if anyone can hear me or not. I always get a little worried when I'm alone here. I'm just gonna have to keep going. So hopefully we didn't lose the stream or nothing with that video, because I never understand about how to work with the copyrights and the fair use and stuff. Trying to discuss how I guess I have to try and loop what I'm saying right now to the video. Like you have to say something quickly before it feels like you're ignoring it or something. So is Bill Mayer kind of he's clutching his pearls about like the liberal things about empathy, you know, I've seen at the end of that. The whole attitude is to be empathetic, but I'm sure if you watch his critiques now, I haven't really actually looked at, because I don't like him, right? Maybe I should have taken the time to see what he's saying. But I would imagine, I'm going to take a guess, that he's being very illiberal and criticizing the woke crowd for invading the Olympics and whatnot. So he would be defending the nationalist kind of rituals and myths from the cosmopolitan ones. But then the defense of the liberalism in general is more of a defense of the cosmopolitan mindset. So that's the whole exposing of the hypocrisy of these kinds of people. But it would be in an academic way. You'd have to be able to understand the all these isms and whatnot. So, yeah, there's another article here. Not to focus too much on this one. There's this another one from this tan deaf online. Olympism. Can you see this? Yeah, cool. Olympism, the values of sport, and the will to power. De Coubertin and Nietzsche meet Eugenio Monti. This one's in 2012. The values of sport is a concept that is often used to justify actions and policies by a range of agents and agencies, from coaches and teachers to governing bodies and educational institutions. From a philosophical point of view, these values deserve to be analyzed with great care to make sure we understand their nature and reach. The aim of this paper is to critically examine the values carried by the educational conception of sport that Pierre de Coubertin developed, and to see how they relate to certain values in the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. To be able to understand in depth the moral construct of de Coubertin's system, this is Pierre de Coubertin is the guy, I guess, who is like considered the father of the Olympics. But anyway, it is essential to delve into the entire system he builds in order to develop athletic participants closer to his ideal of what a human should be. This in turn rests on his conception of man, which is comprised of body, spirit, and character. An understanding of his structure opens the way to a broader awareness of de Coubertin's educational system, of which sport was only part. We will then see that the values are a consequence of this pedagogical search for the ideal human. It is argued that this ideal of a human is similar to the one described by Nietzsche as the Übermensch. Philosophical case study is conducted, taking as its object the story of the first recipient of the Pierre de Coubertin Medal, which rewards fair play among Olympics competitors. Judging the story through Nietzschean eyes allows for his thoughts to be put into practice. His lesser-known texts such as Homer and Competition on the Emulation of Creative Powers shed light on today's sports. Concepts such as guilt, excellence, will to power, and effectiveness help us compare these two authors and understand that competition is not necessarily about dominating others, but more about generating human excellence. So it goes, right? So this is where I'm kind of pointing out there's a whole confusion. Nietzsche's not necessarily a Nazi. I think he came before that time, but the Nazis ended up using Nietzsche's philosophy here. So then I've always kind of, when I look at the Olympics, I don't really like to watch it so much because it kind of seems like a fascist kind of thing, the entire thing, to me. But that's like my bias, I suppose. But I think there's maybe some historical materials here that we can go over that sort of give some credence to why I would believe such things. Like another example as far as why would I think that the Nazis have anything to do with the Olympics? I don't know. The Nazi origins of the Olympic flame relay, right? This is one of those things I'm not sure. We have such an intelligent group in our chat and in our independent media space. I'm sure a lot of you were aware of this fact, but for anyone watching, not in the chat, watching on later on after live, not sure. Did you know that the Olympic flame relay is not an ancient Greek thing so much as a Nazi thing? So let's just take a look at this briefly. Though dressed up as an ancient Greek tradition, the torch relay ceremony was originally designed to further Hitler's nationalist propaganda. Adolf Hitler hadn't wanted to host the Olympics. They were an invention of Jews and Freemasons, he'd said, a celebration of the internationalism and multiculturalism he loathed. But he loved propaganda, the lavish shows of German power and prestige, and by 1934, propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels had convinced him of the Olympics' value in the greater Nazi mission. German sport has only one task: to strengthen the character of the German people, imbuing it with the fighting spirit and steadfast camaraderie necessary in the struggle for its existence. Okay, 1936 Berlin Summer Olympics were to be, according to Arndt Kruger and William J. Murray's History of the Nazi Games, a means of furthering Hitler's ethnic and nationalist messages, a tool of Nazi soft power. Few aspects of the bizarre and highly political 36 Games exemplified Hitler's propaganda mission better than the Olympic torch relay and ceremony. Though propagandists portrayed the torch relay as ancient tradition stretching back to the original Greek competitions, the event was in fact a Nazi invention, one typical of the Reich's love of flashy ceremonies and historical allusions to the old empires. And it's a tradition we still continue today, with this morning's lighting of the flame and blah, blah, blah. Okay, I didn't feel the need to go looking for the rest of this article off paywall because that's kind of, you get the gist of it, and I was just kind of using that as a point. But yeah, pardon me. We'll just take a look, see how you guys are doing over here. So yeah, it's a pity that Abby and Tosh Schmidt are not here tonight at the moment. Hopefully they'll be joining shortly, because I thought that, especially Tosh Schmidt, with the launching of our new sports show there on Tuesdays, thought that they would have good commentary to add to this. But especially when I'm getting back to what I'm reading, when I read that little Atlantic article about Hitler's opportunity of using nationalism to further his interests, and then we go back to this article over here. This is me with my only free whatever, looking at the surface, whatever, the things I can try to deduce, whatever. But you see how this talking about the nationalist penetration of the game should therefore not be resented but welcomed for the sake of peace. So this seems nice and innocent in and of itself, but if you compare it to what Hitler said, whatever, in 1936, it's basically the same kind of rhetoric. So it gets a little bit creepy and suspicious. Okay, that's just me, maybe. And then as far as cosmopolitanism, and then you'll see, like Bill Mayer made a comment about the Soviet Union in his video there, right? So the idea about the playing up the cosmopolitan nature of the Olympics, because at first we all understand. Sorry to seem like I'm kind of jumping around, but not sure. Does everyone understand clearly what we mean when we're saying cosmopolitanism? Because we got this little quick blurb: cosmopolitanism and global citizenship. Cosmopolitanism assumes that all human beings, regardless of their ethnic, sexual, racial, and other specific affiliations, belong to a single community of humanity. The roots of this thought can be traced back to Diogenes in ancient Greece, who proclaimed himself as citizen of the world, cosmopolites. The cosmopolitan thought was further developed by the Stoics, such as Seneca, who famously differentiated the local world that we live in by birth from the other, truly great and truly common world that is shared by all humans. Cosmopolitan thought has close ties to civic humanism and the Enlightenment, code word woke, as it organizes the world around rules and laws that can be applied to all human beings, regardless of their attachment to specific traditions, family ties, national borders, legal traditions, maybe, right? So, yeah, interesting when we start to kind of delve into these concepts. And then when we're applying the question of is the cultural Marxism taking over the Olympics here? I find it constructive to ask the question: what did Karl Marx say about cosmopolitanism? And then, so I quickly, when I'm just sort of reaching for a general thing without having the time or money or whatever, the actual like primary source material of Marx and stuff, I'll just ask the AI, and if it's a satisfactory answer, then I can kind of share that. And you have a problem with that, you can kind of critique me on that, and we can go from there at that point. But anyway, I'm just trying to say, I asked, did Marx say anything about cosmopolitanism? The answer is yes. Karl Marx did touch upon the concept of cosmopolitanism, though not extensively. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels discuss the global expansion of capitalism and the resulting cosmopolitan character of production and consumption. They argue that capitalism creates a world market, leading to the interdependence of nations and the cosmopolitan nature of modern industry. Marx's view on cosmopolitanism is tied to his critique of capitalism and the idea that the proletariat struggle is a global one, transcending national boundaries. His perspective aligns with his broader vision of international solidarity among workers. So we can kind of see how there's an alignment with the idea that cosmopolitanism is kind of like a communist, it can be almost interchanged in like a right winger's mind. You can just kind of code word for communist, right? The globalists are communists, right? It's kind of all gets wrapped up when you're being sloppy with this kind of stuff. But he's not into the mastermind. Says Marx wasn't in the cosmopolitans. He's more into the cosmopolitans. He was more into white Russians. Yeah, he's making a drink joke. Nice. Thinking on your feet there, as always. Yeah, so Sean says cultural Marxism is like saying military intelligence. It's an oxymoron. Yeah, Marxism is a science, right? It sounds a little bit silly. It's a social science. But it's not a cultural thing. Like there can be people who make it about culture, right? People who like to get all the commodification of communism, and then they kind of wear it like sports, get hammer and sickle tattoos and stuff. Anyway, hey Robbie, how's it going? Thanks for coming. Sorry you've been waiting for Abby, I don't know, for a little while, but hopefully she'll be here soon. But if not, that's how it goes, right? So is it the Summer Olympics for our Southern Hemisphere brethren? Yeah, it is kind of funny when you try and do the whole cosmopolitan idea about how it doesn't exactly apply so well, because being from a different part of the world, like the different parts of the world will always kind of be different based on due to obvious things like climate and stuff. And so trying to kind of apply a universal, it's a very tricky, like the paradox between the universal and the particular is always kind of tricky to deal with. And the Olympics are kind of one of those examples to show us how we're trying to deal with it. Jacqueline said, if the Olympics are in the interest of peace, then no country should be banned. If they haven't banned Israel, they shouldn't have banned Russia. Exactly. So that's another thing about the allowing the nationalist penetration of the symbols and myths instead of the cosmopolitan ones. There, it's a little bit ridiculous on its face when you're allowing Israel to fully exploit using their national symbolism throughout the Olympics. And I think in FIFA too. I don't really follow sports or whatever, but they have like their sports players are literal soldiers, and they're using the opportunity to tout propaganda for the Israeli cause, the military and stuff, and that's should not be allowed. They should be banned. Should not be parading genociders around as if they're you know should be celebrated as heroes. Of course not, right? Makes the whole thing about me saying that the Olympics is a fascist endeavor completely legitimate. So you want to deny those claims, stop parading Zionists, which are basically interchangeable with Nazis, right? And I'm sure I haven't really considered what's going on with the Ukrainian teams at the Olympics, but it's all ugly to me, so I don't really want to watch. So if anyone wants to fill me in, right, feel free, but I won't be learning otherwise. So let's keep taking a look, keep rolling here. Sorry if I'm getting a little bit of dead air here, just trying to catch up with your comments there. All right, cool. Okay, let's see, where are we here? And then here's this other thing I thought I'd share quickly. Sorry if I get a little bit all over the place. It's kind of difficult to organize my thoughts when I'm producing and posting at the same time. So this was called Cosmopolitanism and Communitarianism, How Globalization is Reshaping Politics in the 21st Century. It says, this chapter presents a theoretical framework and research design of the book. Just ignore a lot of this. I'm just kind of looking for keywords to kind of make a point, right? It's a little bit annoying and bad research, whatever, but forgive me, I guess. Drawing on cleavage theory, we argue that the new fault lines around globalization can no longer be captured along the classic redistributional left-right axis. This is where I wanted to read this. It's interesting. We hear this all the time. The left-right division doesn't make sense. So when I'm trying to say, think of it as Nazis and communists fighting over the cultural propaganda, the soft power propaganda of the Olympics or whatever, people are going out there saying that the left-right axis doesn't make sense. And I get that, whatever. I mean, like Haas from Infrared, I've heard, has even claimed maybe there's something utility in throwing out the political spectrum. But then I kind of feel like that's a little bit rash, and there's maybe like a postmodernist kind of approach to sort of to say that the left-right axis is meaningless, even though I find that there's a lot of value in this what do you call it? Distinguishing these things and these classifying things in these ways. Mastermind said, Michael, you want me to jump in and moderate? You mean as for the chat? I'm not sure how to make you a moderator at the moment. But, I don't know. It's all good for now. I'm good. Thanks for the offer, though. Yeah, Sean says, I ain't watched them. Hate the spectacle of it. Yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's doesn't get fired up about the Olympics. But this is part of what I was talking about. This guy, the other article, the founder of the Olympics, the De Coubertin guy, the whole mentality behind the athletic development of the participants in the Olympics and stuff is about advancing mankind's potential to the farthest reaches that I can. A lot of people find that's very good ideals we're striving for, but I kind of, knowing the research about eugenics and stuff, I kind of see that as like eugenics applied to the area of sport, where they're, especially when you consider how they like the whole funding process behind it and everything. Like they go around harvesting the best talent from around the world so they can put them on display, and kind of they don't even end up like I don't know the specifics, but from what I'm aware of, they don't really even pay these athletes much at all. Like they're doing it for the prestige, much like a scientist does. They get paid like shit, and they're doing incredible work for humanity supposedly. Like, but then ultimately they're just kind of all they get is the credit for it, as opposed to actual material appreciation for it. And like you got NBA players or something like NFL people getting paid more than Olympians. Make it make sense? The answer is capitalism is bullshit. Anyway, yeah, jump on if you want to jump on the stream, Mastermind. Go for it. Be cool to have another co-host. Not sure if you need any help. You need an invite or anything. I can just throw it in the. I guess the Discord would be the. Don't mind me, everyone here. I'll throw Mastermind a link if he wants to hop on. Appreciate the support there. Not sure how I'm doing so well so far, you guys. You appreciating the stream? You know, not wasting your time right with this? Or hopefully not. All right, there you go. Mastermind. Anyway, yeah, no worries. Take your time. Abby should be here hopefully soon. I thought she was. I'm not sure about how much the overlap was, but hopefully no good news is good news kind of thing. Maybe if it's like a job interview or something for Tosh Schmidt. Sorry, that if it takes a long time, it's because it's a good thing, right? So let's fingers crossed, right? I don't really know. I don't want to talk about their business. Maybe not my business, especially live. Anyway, Jacqueline says, I think with the idea of the Olympics back in the early 20th century, it was all about rich men showing off their athletic skill. Yeah, I had another article here that's a good segue. Remembering. Okay, what's going on? There. Olympic size racism. You guys see that? Yeah. Remembering the 1904 games where Indians, pygmies, and other savages faced off in the interest of science. So I learned this. This was my fun fact this week. I didn't quite know. I knew about the World Fair. I don't know if you guys. I'm sure you guys, some of you are aware what the World's Fair is. But I didn't really realize that there was the actual Olympics association with the putting so-called savages on display at the World's Fair. So we could read this real quick while we're waiting to see if Mastermind wants to jump in or Abby shows up, or maybe if Abby's done but she's having trouble accessing the stream or something. That there's always technical difficulties. But anyway, during an Olympics marked by futuristic swimsuits, age-reversing super Pilates, and nationalistic razzle-dazzle on LCD screens of heretofore unimagined scope, it's helpful to remember that Olympic progress can be measured by more than falling records and technological innovation. The August 8th Parade of Nations featured representatives from 204 countries and territories of varying degrees of sovereignty, wearing 204 flags and wearing 204 outfits designed to reflect the essence of the folks back home. The parade is more than a quadrennial check-in on socio-political changes. Welcome Montenegro, Serbia and Montenegro, we hardly knew you. And fashion changes. Nice to have you back, Newsboy Cap. I don't even know what they're talking about. I'm not a fashion guy. But maybe there was a Newsboy Cap in one of the teams. So it is perhaps the most powerful symbol of actual progress the Olympics has to offer, because that's what they're supposed to be, right? The progress, this powerful symbol of the actual progress of humanity, epitomized in the identity politics of these athletes nowadays, I guess. So that's especially true when you consider that people from several of those parading nations first competed in the Olympics at a bizarre, demeaning, borderline freak show designed to further racial pseudoscience. The 1904 Olympics weren't supposed to take place in St. Louis. The International Olympic Committee had already awarded the first non-European Games to Chicago, but St. Louis complained. It was already hosting the Louisiana Purchase Centennial Exhibition, aka the World's Fair, that summer, and there was no way it was going to let some upstart sporting event rain on its parade, or midway, or technological exhibits, or elaborate temporary architecture. Determined to thwart Chicago's plans, the exhibition's organizers threatened to out-Olympics the Olympics. They'd organize a bigger and better athletic competition that would put Chicago's little continental import to shame. Fearing a calamitous setback for his nascent movement, Olympics founder Baron Pierre de Coubertin backed down and gave St. Louis the third Olympiad. It wasn't much of one. The prospect of an arduous trip to a second-tier city in the American Midwest kept almost all of the top European athletes away. Ultimately, fewer than half the events had even one non-American entrant. The Baron himself steered clear of the games, later recalling that he had a sort of presentiment that the Olympiad would match the mediocrity of the town. So you see these guys have this sneering eugenic kind of attitude. The whole thing is about showing the superiority basically of the white race, and they really couldn't even I'll just keep reading. Even in the US, the Olympics were seen less as an epochal sporting event than as yet another attraction at the World's Fair. When Judy Garland's fictional family goes to the Louisiana Purchase exhibition at the end of Meet Me in St. Louis, I don't know that movie. I don't know if you guys know. Maybe should watch it and you let me know if it's any good if you've seen it. They say it's the most beautiful place on earth. It was pretty cool. I probably didn't need to read all this. My bad. Whatever. Anyway, real visitors saw typical fair industrial exhibits, the world's largest organ, Abe Lincoln's boyhood cabin, newfangled foods like cotton candy and peanut butter and waffle cones, and of course a human zoo. Oh wait, what? Right? So it's this is another part, right? They need to, while they're kind of exposing the obscene racism of the Americans in 1904, they want to throw in a dig at the Beijing Olympics, right? But anyway, the next sentence, the Beijing Olympics, World's Fair of the time, were a great way to demonstrate the host nation's various virtues at best and presumed cultural superiority at worst. So are they kind of trying to suggest that the Beijing Olympics was like Chinese trying to demonstrate their cultural superiority and host nations' various virtues, right? I'm sure I've heard a lot of people talking a lot about how China is like the best at everything a lot these days, and there does get to be a little bit of this this supremacy talk, this supremacist, maybe not be white supremacy, but I guess there might other kinds of supremacy, right? So that's not necessarily a good thing if China is doing that, but I think there's a lot of propaganda that goes on there, and the Chinese are trying to be like very humble kind of nation as opposed to this domination kind of mentality of the West, but then you'd have to kind of take their word for it. And we've been so propagandized into believing that everyone is like Machiavelli that it's hard to conceive of a nation of people that would be so benevolent. So I don't know if we should. Anyway, I'm getting kind of losing my track of thought here. See what you guys are doing here. Yeah, wasn't there a film with Judy Garland about the World Fair? I'm sure that's that's this Meet Me in St. Louis. That's probably that movie right there. Sorry, I didn't realize I forgot to make the font larger. Is that better? Space Needle in Seattle, Wisconsin. I don't know. Washington is from the World's Fair. I don't know a lot of stuff, but one thing I know about the World's Fair is that they had these human zoos there, right? So, but what this article is getting into is that they had like the Olympics, and then they had these what they're going to call the Special Olympics, and they tried to compare the highly trained American, mostly white athletes to these indigenous cultures and the people that weren't really even interested. You'll see in the entire process, they kind of had to be bribed and duped into it. But let me just kind of keep reading, right? So, in 1904, America was in the process of stepping out onto the world stage as an imperialist power. So it's interesting to analyze the context of something like the birth of the Olympics takes place in the context of America stepping out onto the world stage as an imperialist power. So those kinds of things are a little bit affected by each other forever, okay, in a material way. One of the centerpieces of the fair was its Philippine village, featuring live specimens from America's newly acquired territory in a replicated native habitat that spread out over 47 acres. Smaller villages were constructed to house pygmies from Central Africa, American Indians from Mexico, Syrians, Turks, and other savages. Visitors could gawk at them as they simulated a normal day back home. The display was in the spirit of both turn-of-the-century colonialism and social science. World's fairs were conceived in part as a strollable compendium of the world's knowledge. Its organizers wanted the paying customer to marvel at, say, a new wireless telegraph, and a dog-eating member of the Philippines Igoro tribe and draw the same conclusion: white Americans are awesome. So I would just kind of question, maybe it's wrong to conflate the two, but how much is the Olympics the spectacle of, if you actually go, I've never been to one personally, but if you go to the event, you pay for the tickets, how much is like the whole thing similar to what a World's Fair was there, as far as other things to marvel at? Like, I don't know, like Disney World, right? They got all these different attractions, all this more things to add to the circus, right? The Olympics had their own role to play in this pageant of progress. A man named James E. Sullivan brought the games to St. Louis. He was a celebrity of an utterly archaic type, nationally famous for sponsoring and officiating athletic competitions. In 1904, he was the head of the fair's Department of Physical Culture. Just as the Department of Exploitation, that's what they called the marketing department, was designed to promote the virtues of the fair's attractions, Sullivan's group was charged with extolling the virtues of American-style athleticism. The display of primitive people, quote unquote, from around the world and even from St. Louis's backyard, there were many Plains Indian tribesmen on exhibit, was meant to show Anglo-Americans' cultural superiority. Sullivan saw an Olympic Games dominated by American achievement as a demonstration of our physical superiority. So this in particular, I feel, to this day, seems like the whole like purpose of the Olympic Games for the American athletes. They all seem to all dominate the competition every year. We could look at the doping stuff about how they accuse Russia of doping, but a lot of Americans are doing it too. I think they're kind of leading the charge. I'm not sure. Um, I've seen a chart recently, but I don't have it with me for this. I should have maybe, but let me just take a look at your comments here briefly before I jump back in there. Saying Garfield was shot at a fair. That's kind of ironic with the recent assassination attempt of Trump, whatever that you're saying. The previous American presidents from way back in the day was shot at the World Fair of all places, kind of thing. That's kind of just poetic justice, right? Garfield died of lasagna poisoning, of course. This is funny, or not funny, interesting. In the 2012 London Olympics, a load of people were evicted from their flats so the journalists would have a good view of the Olympic Stadium. Right, so it's like, it's interesting, these little tidbits of information alone. It's just one thing, but when you stack it up with trying to make a case for, you know, this like cultural superiority and stuff, and like the classism that's going on with evicting people so that you can throw on your big whatever party. Anyway, say, hey, Mastermind, what's up? Can you hear me? Can't seem to hear you. Not sure if we'll just wait and see if you can sort out some audio issues. You don't seem to be muted, but appreciate you hopping on here. Um, always interesting trying to do this stuff alone, whatever. But I've been kind of wanting to get into some of these, doing my deep dive stuff that I used to, because there's always a lot to. You can make a good point like this if you can get into the rabbit hole deep enough. But a lot of people don't have the patience these days to sit down for this kind of stuff. So yeah, Sean says Olympics are a sociopath's wet dream, right? So it's like we kind of know how there's an issue with like sports trainers, like just like the priests or whatever with the sports players, right? So there's a whole, I'm sure there's a lot of that problem going on. I actually heard a story about they're making a big the media people are making us think about there's an athlete who was apparently a convicted rapist, but he was from 2014, but he was allowed to participate in the Olympics. And so I feel like that kind of thing is intentional because they want to create wedge issues that people can kind of argue over the justice of this or that kind of thing. But it's also seemingly like the full display of like this, like the patriarchy stuff about how we're going to put, like with Donald Trump and stuff, we're going to put like rapists in positions of privilege and act like there's nothing wrong with that kind of thing. And so, yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure if Mastermind can be able to.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Cool. You got your. Wasn't sure if you had any audio issue. What's up?
My audio issue is that I got a room full of people, so I was muting.
Okay, cool. Sorry about anyone inconvenience there, and Mastermind's hosting some company there, but appreciate the solidarity there.
I'm here to help.
What's up, Steve? Hello. Yeah, so let me just kind of finish off this article. I'm trying to make a point with it. I get distracted a bit. So here we go. Here's where the fair's creepy early 20th century ideas about racial superiority reached their icky apogee. Throughout the fair, the so-called primitives participated in physical displays alongside cultural presentations. A visitor to the Patagonian display, for instance, might see native Argentines do a traditional dance and also perform some athletic feat. Sullivan subscribed to the view that the white Anglo-American was at the top of the racial hierarchy in brains and brawn. Here at his fair was a chance to prove it once and for all. He talked to William McGee, his counterpart at the fair's Department of Anthropology, and proposed that they combine their efforts. They would hold a special Olympics, Sullivan's phrase, during the plain old Olympics, in which the savages would mimic their white counterparts. For Sullivan, it would demonstrate the inherent inferiority of the world's indigenous peoples. For McGee, it would create a body of data that would help him make his mark in the emerging field of anthropology and help him develop his pet bit of quackery, complete racial hierarchy. So this, I wonder, how much is that still going on, kind of like, especially with all the data that's recorded like at the Olympics and stuff and other competitions, and you see the fastest man of all time, and they keep trying to push that further and further, like see us how far we can all go with the limits of the human body and everything. And then the whole thing about ranking people according to nationalism and then trying to make nations into ethno-states seems a little bit like trying to create a science of a racial hierarchy according to the the empiricism, using the empirical evidence of competition, because there has to be a winner and a loser. So anyway, the Special Olympics were harder to pull together than they expected, despite the fact that the folks in the human zoo were in quasi-captivity. They were paid professionals with agents and everything. Very few of the primitives had any interest in participating in an amateur competition. The Ainu people of Japan might have stooped to climb trees for fairgoers, but that was because they got paid for it. Some too seemed to balk because they thought the Olympic sports were ridiculous. So it's like, this is another thing too, is we're gonna pick the sports and stuff that we're already good at, and then you have to kind of learn how to play this game or that game. And if you don't think that these sports is like what like would be a good proof of your abilities, kind of your culture's kind of like there's a lot of cultural expression in sports and stuff, but then they kind of like there is cultural imperialism that's taken place with a lot of things like these Olympics. So water polo was quickly scratched from the program. Eventually, whether due to coercion or curiosity, contestants were secured, and the bizarre games within the games began. So this is kind of I still feel like there's a lot of coercion and curiosity to being secured to these participants, right? So it's a lot of people, they want to, it's like their dream to be an Olympian, right? And that's, I appreciate people have their, we all got our individualist kind of dreams as kids and stuff, but then a lot of this is kind of like propaganda being encouraged, right? Like how much of the idea of you being an Olympian comes from your own mind and how much of it comes from watching the TV and stuff, just to be fair. So let me see what I was going to segue to here. So on the idea that that the Olympics is a bit like eugenics, right? That's kind of like a term not to throw around lightly, but this is sort of what they're doing with. It's all ties in, like the white supremacy stuff is eugenics and vice versa. Although I guess technically eugenics is a philosophy that could be adopted by other types of supremacists, but that anyway. But the idea that before I lose my train of thought, let me share this other tab here. That the Olympics is woke and the Olympics is eugenics at the same time seems kind of like a clash of ideas. So I kind of wanted to explore these concepts and compare. That's kind of the supposedly the dialectical method, is to take opposing arguments and actually like hear them out and expose the contradictions and see what sort of synthesis or not can be achieved there, because otherwise you're just hiding from knowledge by not talking about stuff. So if you got any comments, Mastermind, feel free to jump in.
I was just commenting on how the Olympics seems to be a huge drain on any country that hosts it. And I think that it might be going away sooner than later.
Yeah. It's like with everyone having all these crazy economic hardships, they want to be, who wants to be hosting this massive competition that's going to, like they're trying to argue you want to do it. It'll bring economic activity to your town or city, but then it's like a boom and a bust. Like after it comes and then it goes, and then when it leaves, it kind of builds up all this infrastructure that's actually a huge waste of resources and not really good social planning, because they're only thinking short term, whatever profit of this games this year. And so then after the fact, people are always left wondering, like, what the hell do we do with the stadium now?
Well, and that's what happened in Rio. They brought in a bunch of Haitians and shit into Brazil to build all these swimming pools and, all the infrastructure for the Olympics. Then when they built it, they said, see ya, and didn't give them a boat. They just said, get the hell out. And that's why we had a bunch of them coming up through the southern border. Those were all construction workers from the Rio Olympics.
Right. Although I didn't actually... There was this tab I was sharing earlier. I didn't actually finish the blurb. I got to only a few to the first sentence or whatever. But it says down here, whatever, that there's they distinguish three explanations: an economic one centered around the differential material costs and benefits for various collective ones, and a cultural one centered around access to transnational cultural capital and a political one that captures the differing degree to which actors have access to supranational forums of decision making. So, in context of the Olympics, there's like cultural capital apparently to be gained from hosting the Olympics, right? There's economic benefits, but there's also like there's political benefits and cultural ones too to being the host country. But then the Marxist thing to keep in mind would be like um, like Marxists consider politics and economics to kind of be the same thing. We call it the political economy as opposed to differentiating the two because they're kind of inseparable. So.
Well, and I think any benefits gained nationally are going to be outweighed by the local resident, the stress that the local economy gets put on with, hundreds of these visitors coming in and then leaving a week later. Thousands, sorry, not hundreds.
Yeah. Well, you were more of the kind of a person with the mindset that the left-right axis is kind of a bit obsolete. Would I be correct, kind of with that?
Oh yeah, I'm totally post-opulist if that's what you're asking.
Right. So then I feel like you would be a good person to comment on this kind of this little blurb here, where they're saying from the can no longer be captured along the classical redistribution, the left-right axis, whatever. From debates in political philosophy, we infer a distinction between cosmopolitans who advocate open borders, universal norms, and supranational authority. So it'd be like, it's kind of like we could put maybe the word woke could substitute for cosmopolitan and anti-woke for communitarians. I'm kind of finished reading the thing, right? But so advocate open borders, universal norms, and supranational authority, and communitarians who defend border closure, cultural particularism, and national sovereignty. We also distinguish two hybrid positions, which we label liberal nationalism and regionalism. So this kind of, we could, instead of characterizing things as woke or anti-woke, we could use different descriptors that might kind of explain things in a better way.
We're kind of going through that right now with with the Democrats wanting the borders open and the Republicans wanting it closed.
Yeah. So then I've always kind of, I guess, if I were to try to, this is kind of the trap, right? If you have to pick a side, whatever, would you consider yourself woke or anti-woke? Because then there's also the hybrid positions they're talking about, right? But I would say I wouldn't consider myself to be anti-woke, because that's like jumping in the same boat as a lot of these right-wing, I don't know if the word retard is appropriate. It's not very woke of me to use, right? But they're like being anti-woke is like celebrating being asleep at the wheel. That's kind of, you want to put it
right. Well, yeah, I think it's kind of a spectrum. If you're woke or anti-woke, you're on the far end of the spectrum, and at that point, you're really no good to anybody.
Right. Yeah, but this is where I find it interesting about putting people onto a spectrum that you yourself refuse to apply to yourself. It seems a little bit unfair.
That's true.
Yeah. So, but this is maybe I should get into this. I brought up earlier. Well, actually, I'll go to this tab because I brought it up, and I don't want to lose. I was gonna jump into it, so might as well. So this was from the Times of Israel. Huge grain of salt, or whatever, or the irony, right? Is woke social justice is Marxist social eugenics, right? So this is actually one of those things that I would remind people who are socialist, pro-socialist, communist, right, to not forget that there's a bit of a lot of people disparage the idea of what they call the horseshoe theory, that there can be any similarity between the far left and the far right. And I would say that eugenics is potentially the slippery slope that lands Marxists in the same camp as fascists. So that's my particular analysis, my warning that eugenics is not something that should be embraced. But I have seen in the history, my research on the Soviet Union and stuff, and maybe if you can look in some of the things with China as far as like the one-child policy, that there's been a bit of a flirtation at the very least with the eugenic ideas. So I would like eugenics to be firmly associated with the right and the left to have nothing to do with it. But it seems like historically that's not been the case. But anyways,
Well, and with the
yeah,
Chinese version of eugenics, that backfired huge in their face because they wouldn't let women hold property. So nobody wanted to have a little girl. Now there's no women in China, and they got a glut of men because they did some unsavory things to the female babies.
Right. Yeah. And this is where, like, I feel like a lot of people like to shit on Western leftists or Marxists are terrible. We don't know anything. What the hell we're talking about? We're wrong about everything, basically. Right? So, but then the whole thing about criticizing the patriarchy and then eugenics and stuff like this, trying to force society and people into behaving certain ways, like biological determinism and denying that gender is a construct kind of thing, like forcing people into these gender roles and stuff. It's extremely damaging to society, even though it's claimed to be in the name of making it better. So the whole thing about walking the walk and talking the talk, right? You're going to claim to be the philosophy, the ideology that's going to break the oppression, but then you're going to be doubling down on men's oppression of women like that. It's hypocritical, and it's a contradiction that needs to be resolved. If you want to talk about it in a dialectically materialistic kind of way, right? People want to be high on their supply kind of thing, right? You got to be understanding what you're talking about, and not just kind of like referring to the theory and not actually putting it into practice, right? Because that's, you can talk about it all you like as if that's what you're doing, but if you're not analyzing your mistakes as you're making them, you're not really actually putting the method into practice. So I was just gonna read this because this is coming from the Times of Israel. So whatever they have to say about Marxist eugenics, what they're doing right now, complete whatever hogwash. Come up with your funny word there, right? Malarkey, like just bullshit. Whatever. Actually, the perfect word would be, what's that word that they hasbara, right? Their propaganda. Anyway, after October, actually, I didn't really read this article. I don't know if I was actually going to read this one because I didn't want to platform them too much, and so I don't really know what I would be getting into there. But I was going to show that and show this one just to show you like who says what about this stuff. That Marxism is eugenics and woke is eugenics, and if they're taking over the Olympics, then it's because it's the Marxists who are the eugenics and not us, the Zionists, right? With their fucking ethnic cleansing underway, right? And you got this from the far right people. There's this Edward Dutton guy. I don't know if you guys know about him. Woke eugenics. He's written a book, or whatever. And this is like viewer discretion be advised, or whatever. He in this provocative book, it is argued that wokeness drives the genetically sick to self-select out of the gene pool, and so the political right should welcome it as a positive boon. Okay, the political right has long viewed wokeness as an agent of destruction for the West. But what if the opposite is true? What if wokeness is the West trying to save itself? Should conservatives welcome wokeness with open arms? Modern prosperity has relaxed selection pressures and let genetic mutations flourish, as seen in the rise of antisocial behavior and the decline of intelligence. Wokeness appeals to the genetic mutant and convinces him to stop breeding, thus removing him from the gene pool. Wokeness is the ultimate eugenics. So it's like, if you look into this guy, I found this little, where is it? A wiki. Yeah, here. Rational Wiki article. This guy's a total clown, right? So anyone reads that kind of book and think that they're reading someone serious, they're reading a fucking work of a con man who's been caught being a con man, right?
Yeah, he makes woke sound like idiocracy.
Yeah. If my teenage son tried to persuade me to drink oat milk, I would beat him with a belt. Diversity destroyed Britain and Rome, okay? He's a far-right English YouTube grifter, QAnon conspiracy theorist, anti-vegan, transphobe who writes articles for white nationalist websites. Like, his views include eugenics, climate change denial, race and intelligence, pseudoscience, sexism, anti-feminism, transphobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-veganism, and white supremacy. So it's interesting when you compare the views of a lunatic kind of like this guy, and then what sort of people like to pick and choose which one of these things they want to be, and try and distance themselves from the far right, but then they want to try and sanitize some of the other things like climate change denial, right? Like, or a lot of people want to do the race and intelligence pseudoscience and the sexism pseudoscience, right? Like you see here, I'm sure like there's a little bit of a problem. I'm not super woke as far as like super happy with everything that's going on with the trans stuff. I also don't think it's like this trans agenda being pushed on everyone that we need to be taking away people's rights and making like really bad laws about. Like, I think that there's the issue of transhumanism at play, and the thing about like eugenics is in at play in gender science, and the trans issue being used as a football between eugenicists and people who are, I guess the word is anti-eugenic. I don't know. So, but the trying to make the point about woke eugenics, it's good to share this next tab because this is like a voice of reason in comparison to the right wing. As far as the left wing, kind of everyone like the leftists always feel like we're the voice of reason, and the rightists feel like they are the voice of reason. But like that other guy, like claims to be some kind of like I didn't get further down in the article. The Edward Dutton guy is like Trump or whatever, where he started a fake university, right? And he'll pull that kind of scam. But then we'll have people on the left will have like actual academics who have more of a rational argument that's worth taking seriously, but you got the both sidesism taking place where they're treated equally. The issue is that a lot of these leftist academics tend to be more of like a Democrat at the end of the day, or social democrat, which is frustrating. But propaganda takes place, anti-communist propaganda makes a lot of people who would be socialists into liberals, we put it that way. So this guy says, woke eugenics is when eco-warriors talk of population control, they mean the world would be better off with fewer poor black people. And I agree with this sentiment, that a lot of people are talking about we're overpopulated, wherever. We gotta eat with paper straws or whatever, right? And this kind of thing, whatever. You guys got to pay for it, whatever. So if two's company and three's a crowd, 7.7 billion is a problem. That is if you're a climate change activist with a penchant for Thomas Malthus. So I guess this is kind of getting off topic because we're talking about the Olympics and stuff. But as far as the quality over quantity argument, who do we want? We want people like the Olympians. We don't want these people who live in the slums, right? So it's about putting on this big spectacle, spend all these billions of dollars every year on these competitions that don't actually need to happen, but they're treated as more important than people who are expected to die because apparently there's too many of us, right? So let me just kind of waste some time hammering on the Malthusians who seem to be growing in numbers every fucking day. So sorry, pardon my French. Along with wacky protests and vegan cheese, the recent focus on climate change has popularized long-standing concerns about population control. Well, another thing about concerns about climate change, how much emissions are associated with the Olympics? Somebody want to do that math for me? That would be fun. So there are birth strikers, women who would love to have kids, can have kids, but feel they shouldn't because of impending planetary doom. And there are royals who seek praise for pronouncing they'll only have one child to offset their private jet carbon emissions. There are even eco-fascists like the killers in El Paso and New Zealand who attempt to marry their xenophobia with increasingly acceptable distress about overpopulation. So when they're talking about we should welcome wokeism as a boon because they're gonna purge themselves from the gene pool. So that's like you can see like the eco-fascists, like killers marrying their xenophobia or whatever. They're they're getting their rhetoric from someone like that or whatever with their bullshit, and it has a lot of damage, right? So it's a myth, right? We're not even overpopulated. You want to look at got a graph here briefly. I'm getting a little bit all over the place, but I need to at least show this here, because yes, the population is going to reach 10.4 billion in 2086 allegedly, but look at this growth rate in the population crash or whatever. So it's already, it says in 2023 it's already at this far down the into decline, right? So the whole thing about not having enough babies around the world is a very real thing, and then people want to say we're overpopulated, but we're already not. Like, there's a lag, a catch up that's taking place. Like, the population's already crashing, and people are going to act like we need to force it to crash even more. That's going to create so much damage, unnecessary suffering. So, but people have to believe in their cause as opposed to feelings over facts, right? So, getting back to this, in fact, discussion of population control has become so normalized, it even has its own international holiday, World Population Day, which just passed in July. It's July 11th. But I don't know how many people know about that. And while people around the world aren't necessarily encouraged to celebrate by cursing the day they were born or picketing maternity units, there have been some questionable campaigns launched to mark the occasion. Last year, the UN announced its support for Thriving Together, a collaboration of more than 150 organizations committed to the recognition of the importance of family planning to conservation. The campaign aims to increase family planning services in developing countries to help stop rural and low-income families from having more children. Why? Because population growth inhibits the conservation of biodiversity, the environment, and sustainability. Birth rates are either stable or dropping. Probably not needing to read all this. Sorry if I'm distracting you guys. Maybe I should chime in to see any comments. Take a break from the reading. Sorry. What's up?
Yeah, I've been watching them. They're going all over the place in chat. We're talking about milking coconuts and stuff, so we're just being silly.
That's all right. Well, often if I find with ADD, kind of everybody having shorter and shorter attention spans, not digging on anybody, but myself included, when anybody tries to get into an article anymore, it tends to like have people's attention wandering. So, but I wanted to get into this little bit about David Attenborough, at least. So I think I'll just skip down to this paragraph here. This quasi-eugenicist privileging of the environment over human beings is nothing new. David Attenborough, who paraded on stage at Glastonbury last year to cheers from thousands of young progressives, is a longtime supporter of population control in its most Malthusian form. Back in 2011, in an interview with the Wellcome Trust, these names I feel come up, so it's like, take a note of that if you never understood what's wrong with them. Attenborough declared that he couldn't think of a single problem that wouldn't be easier to solve if there were less people. And who are these people he's talking about? They're those inhabiting slums in South America, India, and Africa. Places that Attenborough describes as huge areas occupied by people living, whole families in tiny little apartments with no sanitation and no future. Rather than arguing that those people living in poverty in parts of the developing world should be given access to the same resources that we enjoy in the West, clean water, housing, and job opportunities, Attenborough and those like him simply think there should be fewer of them. And this is where skipping all over that, even though if you want to read it, it's maybe a good article. You mentioned, down here, it's ironic that the link between planetary doom-mongering and women's reproductive rights has had such an outing at the same time as women's bodily autonomy is hitting the headlines. You don't need to travel far to find women who are unable to control when and with whom they have children. Despite recent law changes across Ireland, access to abortion is still limited and conditional for most women. Trump's decision to court the pro-life vote has bolstered reactionary legislators across America to bring in anti-abortion bills in Texas, Alabama, Utah, South Dakota, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Missouri, and other states. Even in the UK, women do not have comprehensive abortion rights. The recent row over Labour leadership candidate Rebecca Long Bailey's views on time limits for abortion shows how even politicians who pose as radical can still cling to reactionary views when it comes to women's freedom. The eco-woke concern with limiting the population, women's bodily autonomy seems to be a legitimate price to pay in order to solve the climate crisis. So I'm totally off on a tangent now, but the reason why I was bringing all this up, it helps to kind of try and figure out who's on what side in the culture war kind of crap. And so it's interesting to kind of tie the threads together of the fight over the reproductive rights and that the Democrats want to dangle to get people to vote for them. Kind of has a little bit to do with the people arguing in favor of women's, limiting women's autonomy to solve the climate crisis. So you can sort of see the Democrats are the eugenicists, the woke mind virus, whatever you want to put it that way, like the fucking like here's another tab here. I'm not going to read this, but I just want to show this article if people wanted to read it. It's philosophyforlife.org. The future is female, feminism, spirituality, and eugenics. So there's a whole like kind of rabbit hole you can go into there where there's the eugenic side of reproductive rights is to talk about the woman who's empowering herself by choosing like who she allows herself to procreate with and what kind of a ubermensch Olympian that they're trying to create when they're having kids, basically, right? Being a fucking breeder, that's the term. But then you see when you're trying to analyze both sides of the issue and be fair or whatever, you see how the right-wing people are saying crap like the woke mind virus will produce the rise of antisocial behavior and people will convince people to stop breeding. And you see a lot of what you might call ultra leftists running around declaring the world is so despairing and dystopic and bullshit that I don't want to have kids, even though I could maybe, like they come from affluence maybe, but you know what I'm saying? It's interesting to sort of try and be detached and objective and see where there's what you might call kernels of truth from both sides there. I don't know. Any comments? So then there's this here, woke Olympics risks reveling in mediocrity. So then the IOC want to place inclusivity alongside celebrating sporting best, yet these two values are often fundamentally incompatible. So it's ironic to see the Olympics gets turned into maybe like a election football where the eugenic undercurrents are at play, where the people who would celebrate the, like tying it back with the spectacle that pissed everybody off at the Olympics here. So the fact that there are people trying to make the Olympics more about mediocrity is supposedly a bad thing, because we're supposed to be celebrating humanity's epitome, right? The elite, right? This is about the elite. This isn't about you mongrels, right? So I find that interesting, right? As far as the idea about like the nationalism, cosmopolitanism thing, woke, anti-woke, it all kind of makes sense to me.
Well, and I'm not even sure what the French are doing with this Olympics. I can't tell if they're serious or if they're trolling everybody. I mean, even the opening Olympics, they were like blowing up the royal castle, not actually blowing it up, but with like confetti and stuff in their theatrical ways. They're really going over the top, and I can't tell if it's tongue in cheek, like they're being sarcastic about it, or if they are just really trying to push the wokeness in everybody's face.
Yeah, it's ironic it seems like they're a little bit like gender bent's not the right kind of, it's the only metaphor that comes to mind, whatever. They seem like they're confused. They're like in some kind of dysphoria as opposed to do they want to be woke or anti-woke? And then they're kind of trying to please both sides, whatever.
Right.
Like France is interesting because they got a very like Marx, a lot of the history of communism has to do with France. So there's a big left wing always traditionally in France, but France is also got this colonialist, like they got some serious like far right history to them too. So
Right. It's like,
identity crisis.
yeah, it's like they want to behead Marie Antoinette, but do it in the most environmentally protected way or efficient, or even well, and that's why I was thinking it was tongue in cheek because they're French, and they have sort of a weird sense of humor. And I thought, well, maybe if they were super woke and they're taking jabs at the woke population, but then they had the female boxing where they're having they're not technically trans, they just have female on their passport, so I guess they've always identified that way. I don't know, but it's still people with a lot of testosterone beating up on cis women. And after that, I thinking it's not tongue-in-cheek, they actually mean this crap.
Right. Well, also with the like there's always just kind of been like women with the higher testosterone and stuff, so there's always, even without this advent of like the cultural phenomenon of whatever the trans stuff, and the celebration of like the wokeism stuff, like there was always going to be women that are kind of more man-like based on genetics and stuff. But then we got all this pollution in the environment, that's kind of like affecting our evolution, you might say. I don't know, I'm not enough of a scientist to be able to make these kinds of claims, but I think there's enough pollution, like like the Alex Jones things where they're turning the frogs gay, right? Like, so it's a little bit ironic as far as the anti-woke people being all hating on the trans stuff when capitalism kind of pollutes the environment and sort of proliferates, like, because the endocrine disrupting chemicals like in plastic and all these other, like you guys did the water thing just yesterday, right? So all this stuff that they feel is acceptable to do to us results in this kind of strange divergence, like behavior and genetic kind of expression and stuff.
Yeah,
So
this whole
you fuck
no,
yourself.
I just could say the whole planet seems to be some sort of guinea pig. It's just an F around and find out world now.
And everyone wants to go around blaming everybody. It's a little like nothing to be done at this point. If like with forever chemicals and stuff, like there are things to be done. That's the whole thing about Leninist, right? It's like what is to be done, right? There are to take charge and not act like this learned helplessness. It's like there's nothing to be done, but being realistic with how much damage is being done. In a lot of cases, we're gonna have to make our peace with, like, instead of blaming everyone for being like this is my, like, personally blaming the boomers for being responsible for the as much as they were for the climate crisis, economic crisis, not feeling the need to be politically engaged in the result of that kind of thing. At some point, you need to bury the hatchet for the sake of survival. But anyway, it's hard to do. So I mentioned, I got to share it because I mentioned it earlier, and I think it's interesting to touch on the idea that wokeism comes from Christianity, because I'm sure we've all heard that wokeism is the cultural Marxism, like the Israelis want to say, right? But the caveat about this article here is I think it's written by, let me just read it. You'll hear, if I read it, you'll see what I mean. I mentioned yesterday that I'd read a long article that attempts to explain more or less how America got where it is today in cultural and therefore political terms. The article is written by a Chinese-American, Chelu Yang Peng. Briefly, his parents, converts in China, grew up amid the Cultural Revolution and are now missionaries to America. Peng's field of study is religious sociology. So that, I feel, is a good caveat to remember who's writing. Where does this idea that Christians' roots of wokeism comes from? Well, a Chinese, probably anti-communist family that left China during the Cultural Revolution, and now they're probably Christian converts. And this kid grew up studying religious sociology So his Christian, what I would say, brainwash mind comes up with after his going through schooling and everything is to explain wokeism as a Christian thing. What I find, like, I wouldn't really waste your time with this, except for I find that there's actually maybe a little bit of there's a little there, like it's not totally out of nowhere, but there's divergences of this kind of, you can't do this kind of research if you're not a dialectical materialist or whatever. You're going to have a different opinion when you look at this kind of historical material as opposed to someone who's doing the dialectical and the historical materialism in the like actual orthodox Marxist tradition kind of thing. But anyway, so what Peng sets out to do in his article is to explain the phenomenon of wokeism as well as the various reactions to it. While his explanation isn't necessarily totally comprehensive, it's a good jumping off point for further reflection. Peng begins by noting the growing cottage industry of reaction against wokeism, then lists the typical American reactions. He begins with fusion conservatives. I forget what the NR stands for. The NR-style conservatives who fuse economic libertarianism with social conservatism. So we kind of we've heard this line before, whatever. Economically liberal but socially conservative. That's got like a very historic kind of origin. But he identifies this trend with the Goldwater to Reagan years in particular. This fusionism was strongly anti-communist during the Cold War, and we see its continued hold over a substantial portion of Americans, both in Hillary's gaslighting Russia hoax ploy, as well as in the American war on Russia, which draws support from many of Cold War generation. So Peng notes that this crusading tendency of fusionism has also lent its support to neocon projects around the world. He maintains that anti-communism has been repurposed in the fight against wokeism under the title Cultural Marxism. He grants that there is indeed truth in this critique of wokeism, but questions whether it misses something important. How did cultural Marxism succeed in a society where actual materialist Marxism failed to take root? In longer form, taken together, anti-woke activists paint a picture of wide-eyed teens who come into college as blank slates, leave as radicalized leftists armed with the messages of obscure German intellectuals, and enforce these ideas at their newfound bureaucratic positions. Yet these genealogies fail to understand the moral attitudes that drive wokeness and drive people to wokeness. They explain the how, but not the why. This is how wokeness was synthesized, and this is how it spreads in academia and the workplace. But not, why does wokeness even exist to begin with, and why is it appealing to certain sets of people? So having set the terms of the inquiry, Peng turns to people who, like John McWhorter, woke racism, how a new religion has betrayed Black America, who have explained wokeism in explicitly religious terms. Here, Peng summarizes McWhorter's basic starting point using the term elect as a synonym with religious connotations for woke. The 7 tenets should be taken in a sociological rather than a strictly doctrinal sense. McWhorter then lays out 7 tenets of the elect that make them religious. The elect have superstition, the elect have clergy, the elect have original sin, the elect are evangelical, are apocalyptic, ban the heretic, and supplant older religions. Therefore, McWhorter's thesis goes, the religion of anti-racism is just as much a religion as any commonly recognized religion. McWhorter writes that the elect religion is eerily akin to devout Christianity. Upon closer inspection, in fact, one notices that Christianity is the only religion that fulfills all 7 of McWhorter's tenets, suggesting that wokeness is more than merely like Christianity. So basically, we have a little bit of a little thing to test this theory on. He's saying that wokeness is Christianity based on like laying out these 7 tenets. So you want to try and kind of go with do the little thought experiment that he lays out, whatever. Will you say that woke people have superstition? You know, if I ask you guys, mastermind, would you say that woke people are superstitious? I think like the right wing people would say, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where you can make a case for that, but I think that I guess it depends on how you define superstition. I mean, if you stretch that out a little bit, I mean, I don't think people won't step on a crack or don't worry about black cats, but yeah, they have a lot of ideas that they put upon themselves that they think are rules or laws that are just made up, like superstition.
But I think that's where people have like this postmodernist tendency there where they can like blur the lines, they can make up a definition into whatever they want. So that's kind of at play there a bit, where if you're being opposed to, like, if you support the objective truth, then I would say that woke people are not superstitious. If you go, you have to understand that there's this, the right wing try to capture the definition of woke and turn it into what it's not, kind of thing. The original definition is this like critical race theory kind of idea about being aware of historical injustices and seeking to correct them and stuff. What's interesting is how this guy gets like further on into it. He kind of explains how that idea of having a historical awareness and seeking to correct it maybe has its roots like ethically in like liberal, like Protestant kind of thinking. So that's maybe an interesting underappreciated angle. But back to this thing, whatever, would you say that the woke have clergy? That's more of an interest. That one I'd say maybe, yeah, a little bit more.
Yeah, oh yeah, they have their hierarchies, sure.
And then original sin, that's a little tricky though. The original sin being like racism, right? Like if you're white, born white, you're born a racist or something, like born privileged. So maybe, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, I missed my mute button.
Yeah, sorry. The elect are evangelical, so that I'm not really too familiar with evangelicals because I was Lutheran. Growing up, I went to a Lutheran church, and then later we went to an Anglican church. So that's more my exposure to Christianity, and I think there's more evangelicals in the States and stuff. But evangelical means to like profess your. Maybe I should look it up, or whatever. If you know what it is, would you be able to tell me what the definition would be?
Of evangelical.
Yeah.
Evangelical?
Yeah.
Boy, I guess I've never really actually looked up the definition. I think it's just hardcore Bible is verbatim Word of God stuff.
Right.
I think and aren't the evangelicals, they don't believe it's an analogy. They think
So
that
they take it literally, right? Every word is gospel, basically.
right. I think so.
The definition,
my definition anyway.
well, when I Google it, it says of or according to the teaching of the gospel or the Christian religion, and I think that's you got it on the nose or whatever. That's kind of you refreshed my memory. That's kind of what I've heard other people say, but it's like I don't think about it very often, right?
Yeah, I think the dictionary definition's a little loose there. I mean, that's just a Christian. I mean, if you want to be an evangelical Christian, you got to go hard. You got to go hard in the paint.
But the reason why I want to be sure about what word we're using here is when we're trying to say, are the woke evangelical? What kind of what Holy Bible did they have to take the word like excessively literally? I don't really think that one fits with woke.
Well, unless I guess the only way I could kind of put that is, if you went with the DNC playbook as a Bible, I guess maybe, but that's pretty loose.
Yeah. So this is where it's good to like actually test this kind of thing, because then you see where it falls apart. So, and then the elect, the woke are apocalyptic. You can maybe say there's some of that with the climate change stuff.
But I don't think they're any more doomsday than the evangelicals. They keep talking about the end of times. They put it in their book. So I think that's three fingers pointing back.
Yeah. Well, ban the heretics 100%. The cancel culture, that's like, I don't know.
That's a gimme. Gimme.
That's ironic for me as far as I think it was on Hardlands Media the other day. What's that guy's name? Choosy Carnation guy. Talking about the word heretic.
Oh, yeah.
I looked up the word heretic, and I didn't realize that it originally means someone has the ability to choose, like as in what kind of philosophy they want to believe in. But then the Christians came in and altered the meaning of the word to mean in a negative kind of sense, like people,
How dare you not choose Christianity, you heretic? How dare you choose something other than what you've been force fed?
God's will or whatever means you don't get to choose. So yeah, I choose for you, for your choices for you, and then I say that God did it. So that's the thing about the Christian guy who's doing this research, talking about woke people in terms of his Christian worldview. It does get to be a little bit like confirmation bias, or like him reading his own like projection, you know. And then supplant older religions. Yeah, that's like the whole purpose of woke, is to progress people um, beyond the things that we feel are holding us back, that we don't need. Like we don't really need a society that's racist and stuff. We would be. That's a religion we should supplant if racism is a religion, right? But then people feel the need to argue against anything, right? So
Well, and I think every religion's main goal is to infect and take over all other religions. You always got to spread the word. It's just it's a sick popularity contest.
yeah, well, I don't really like religion. I'm not necessarily an atheist, more of an agnostic, or whatever. But I like the Marx's idea that we should try to be irreligious in our thinking, because it's something that kind of clouds our judgment. But if people want to, like, the whole idea about freedom of religion, we're not really like we just become oppressors of a different kind when we start to oppress people for their religious beliefs. I feel that they're wrong, but the way to overcome those things is through dialogue, not through oppression. So
Yeah, I'm with you. I wouldn't call myself atheist. That means no God, right? I'm more agnostic. I believe that there's something out there, but I think it's super. I shouldn't use super. I think it's very. I don't even know the word I'm looking for. Um, that people think that they know the word of God is just silly. It,
yeah, it's
I
scientific. People like to say, throw around words like schizophrenic, right? I feel like there's a religious schizophrenia at play when you're going around like a megalomania to say that I'm so special, or narcissism. I'm the one who gets to hear the word of God and to translate it. I get to be the mouthpiece. Like, no, nice try.
Right. Yeah. If Moses came down from the mountain today with a tablet, nobody would believe him. So I don't know. Does that mean we're more cynical, or does that mean we used to be more gullible?
I don't know. I feel like it's a little too. Things are too nuanced to be able to say like this is the idea. People like to think that like we've progressed and we are smarter than people used to be, but it's kind of not so simple. To like we kind of progress and regress. Like I feel like lately we've kind of been going backwards a lot. Where like there is a lot of ancient people that were probably much more intelligent than we've been acting lately. Right? But it doesn't mean that we're in permanent regression. It just means that there are some things that we've adapted to that are probably maladaptions. The issue about talking about adaptations and stuff is you get this Darwinian kind of perspective that we've been taught that's kind of hard to get away from. And if you get away from it, is it even scientific, right? The whole thing about this science, the Enlightenment, was not just about social science. It's also about the advancement of science in general, away from like superstitious Christian kind of thinking about how the world works, right? Not, but anyway, I think there was a couple of parts of this that I wanted. I don't know if kind of we're getting close to the end here, but I wanted to read a few more parts because it's interesting about he sort of makes a good point about how uh, the two sides are more similar than they realize, whatever. And then there's some some of the people who are crusading against wokeness are doing it kind of in a way, like in their own kind of woke way, right? They're pursuing their own woke agenda, if you want to put it that way, but they call it anti-woke. And I find that there's maybe some truth there. So let me see where I can pick up here. Peng also briefly examines the somewhat similar views of Eric Kaufman. However, he finds both critiques of wokeism lacking in that neither critique goes far enough. They fail to follow the genealogy of wokeism to its real source. Yet there seems to be a missing puzzle piece to these sociologies of wokeness. Both McWhorter and Kaufman note the striking similarities between wokeness and Christianity, particularly to Protestantism. Say that 3 times fast. Yet neither takes Occam's razor and states that the two are similar because there is a direct link between them. Now, I think we recently learned quite well that with the conspiracies and stuff around the Trump assassination, that Occam's razor doesn't exactly work perfectly, but that's neither here nor there. The answer to the genesis of woke lies right in Kaufman's analysis. Wokeness came from liberalism. The question then is, what caused liberalism? The answer, the missing piece of the puzzle, is that liberalism is an outgrowth of Christianity, and especially the Protestant Reformation. So I've heard people that are not Christians, anti-communists from China, immigrants, say that the same thing, that liberalism is an outgrowth of the Protestant Reformation kind of thing. So this is maybe historically accurate kind of thing, and then that's something that people forget. And also, apparently conservatism is a brand of liberalism, which is kind of mind-bending for people. Like someone who's not an academic, you hear someone say conservatism is actually liberalism. That doesn't make any sense. It's like telling you that black is white. But from the way that the academics say it, explain it, it does make sense that conservatives are conservative about a liberalist paradigm or worldview that they adopted with like the American Revolution and stuff.
Yeah, they made the full horseshoe. They went all the way around and came all the way back.
Yeah, so there is validity to the idea that conservatives are liberals too, which is kind of makes this guy's claim that they're both woke actually makes sense in a way that doesn't make sense, because the way that we use language is kind of, there's a limitation to language and logic in and of itself. So even though there's value to this approach or whatever, it might not be absolute perfect, like the perfection of truth that people are looking for that you'll never find. So let me just see if I can, because I don't want to be going on and on and on. So I'll just kind of skip down. One may notice that wokeness appears to be a syncretic blend of Puritanism and Quakerism. Woke adherents value elite education and moralizing, seem obsessed with rooting out heretics, adhere to orthodoxy, and display a sense of personal salvation, traits that were all characteristic of Puritans, while also displaying the radical openness and commitment to egalitarianism that characterized the Quakers. By the close of the colonial period, Pennsylvania was ethnically and religiously more like modern America than any other colony. Yeah, I will get kind of lost in the sauce with this, but it is kind of interesting. As faithful observance declined among mainline liberal Protestants, their intellectual descendants retained their puritanical sense of moral superiority and the liberal desire to rid the world of the sin of structural inequality. As theologian James Wood writes, social gospel Protestantism shifted away from almost any sense that sin was personal toward primarily social and structural understandings of sin, which became the exclusive focus as religious belief rapidly declined in American society. So basically, instead of calling it like the social structural problems kind of a sin, they're kind of the claim is that they're still having like a Protestant kind of mentality, but they're shifting their language from like religious overtones to making it more of a secular way of saying it, but they're kind of maintaining that that Protestant mindset. So while adherents of the social gospel sought to do on earth as it is in heaven, those who stopped believing in a Christian heaven still kept working to build a heaven on earth, right? So we want a utopia. We still believe in a utopia, but we don't consider it heaven on earth. But functionally, it's the same thing. So today's social justice adherents need not have a Protestant background to adopt its tenets. Like Christianity itself, social justice is a universalist faith anyone can join. For example, many Reform and secular Jews assimilated into this universalist faith as they attended the universities of the formerly Protestant elect. So it is interesting. We're kind of getting up on time. So is there any comments on that? I've been talking. I don't need to rest my voice.
Yeah, no, I was. It was very mind stretching because I wouldn't think you could make that many parallel lines between wokeism and Catholicism.
Yeah, that's the division between Protestantism and Catholicism in its relation to wokeism, right? Because they've been changing over the years. It's interesting to see how far the Catholic Church has come, kind of thing, and the Protestants too. There's a term called WASPs. I forget exactly what it stands for. Wealthy. I don't know. It's about P stands for Protestants, but do you know what I'm talking
Anglo-Saxon.
White Anglo-Saxon Protestants, right? So there's a whole rabbit hole we could go down on for another day, talking about the WASPs.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting to think about them and their fight for whatever political supremacy as far as the American electoral machine and stuff. And so, yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So I've been neglecting the chat here. Kind of see whatever.
Yeah, I'm going to let you. I'm neglecting my family. They're all yelling at me. They want me to go grill some brats for them. So I'm going to pop out of here. And excellent show, Michael. I'm glad I could jump in here and give you a hand and let everybody know that you should like, share, and subscribe to Noteworthy and to Abby Do. And while you're at it, hit up Tin Rabbit.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. Yep. Everyone, please like, share, and subscribe. Watch Tin Rabbit Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Civilian Discourse Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure as far as the name of Tosh Schmidt's new show, and I'm not sure as much about her. I think her co-host that joined her the first time will be a recurring co-host, but these things are a little bit tentative at the moment.
Everything's fluid.
I'm just trying to say, what's the name of that podcast? Is it Black Athletes?
Yes, I don't know. Sports? I didn't know if that was the name of the show or just the title or whatever. So we'll see if it's the same next time. Then we'll know that's the name.
Yeah. Sorry for butchering it, as far Abby and Tosh Schmidt, if you rewatch this. But Perspectives from the Boot. I remember that part.
Right.
So yeah.
With the Louisiana.
Yeah. So looking forward to that show. I wish that they would have been able to be here for our commentary on the Olympics because the sports background that I don't have, but that's the way it goes, you know.
That's life.
So yeah, sorry, I'm holding you up.
I wish I would have been able to get a clip of that Canadian swimmer puking from swimming in the Rhine when we were doing our water episode on Tin Rabbit.
Yeah, well, I should have
fit in nicely.
I should have looked up for some videos for closing out from the Olympics, right? But maybe I still got time to do that, but that's okay.
All right, I'm popping out. Goodbye, fam. Thank you, Michael, and I'll see y'all Monday.
Yeah, see you next time. See you in whatever next chat I see you in. So have a good one.
Right on. See ya.
Peace. All right.